right, so the next bit, now we take all of this data and we put it down here on our graph. Okay, so the first thing is along the x-axis, I am going to put my intervals. Now I want you to think of, okay, so if this interval is 40 to 50, that is what my first set of little notches are going to be, 40 to 50. Now notice how that's an interval of 10. So that means all of my intervals are going to be 10, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, and so on. And notice where your x and your y-axis cross, that is of course always 0. And we went from 0 to 40 pretty quick. So that's not really accurately reflected there in the distance. If this to that is a 10, then that can't actually be 40. So we need to do this little symbol here to show that we have condensed that x-axis. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to label my y-axis with units of 1. So 1 data value, because we're talking about data frequencies that are relatively low, so we don't need a huge spread out y-axis. And then we're going to label those 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on. So now we have our numeric scaling. Now each of these scales needs to have a label. So 50, 60, what? Students? What do those numbers mean? They mean the heart rate intervals in beats per minute. And then this one over here, these numbers represent the frequency, meaning how many students had that amount. And then we're going to say here, heart rates. All right, now we can start transferring this data. All right, so the 40 to 50, that occurred 3 times. So we are going to put a bar that represents that first bucket of values. And then we are going to then do another bar to represent our bucket of 50 to 60, which that occurred 4 times. So that one's going to go here. And we'll go ahead and just make our bars look different. And the next bucket is going to be 60 to 70, which that occurred 5 times. So that's our next one. That looks like, yeah, it's about 5. There we go. So 3, 4, and then 5. And we'll go ahead and make that one kind of a stripy bar to make it look different. And then from 70 to 80, I see that that interval occurred twice. So we're going to make this bar way down here, quite low. And that one do this way. And then our last interval from 80 to 90, that occurred once. So 80 to 90, 1. And then so this bar goes down here. Okay, so you can see that all of the bars in my histogram are literally touching. So in a bar graph, they're spread out. There's going to be little gaps between. In a histogram, they're all touching. So that indicates that that range from 40 to 50 is entirely inclusive. There's no gaps in that. Now, if I were to have had no values between 50 and 60, if that bucket had been 0, then of course that would then be at 0, and then there would be a gap between the bars, but that would be very purposeful. So if there are values for every single interval, then of course every single bar would be touching. All right, so that is a histogram, and it shows a great visual representation of the data showing those intervals and how frequently they occurred.